Wednesday, January 9th. I'm Scott.
I'm Rim.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight we review Bone. Let's do this.
So this weekend, if all goes according to plan, and I have not put much planning into this yet, but someone else has, someone else named Scott.
You have made the mistake of relying on others.
Well, the thing
is, a
is,
mistake we do not often make.
I really just didn't expect this day to come. But you see,
a lesson you should have learned.
I have not skied in about a decade.
I don't know if skied is a word. I think you're supposed to say have gone skiing.
Well, no, I have not I've not gone skiing, nor have I skied, the verb ski. I have, in fact, not skied since I lived in Michigan.
How about water skiing?
Water skiing is not the same thing.
But I'm saying it's still skiing.
Yes, and you know what? I have not water skied either.
Well, ski-doo.
I have not done that either.
How about skee-ball?
I've played skee-ball.
Oh, you skied.
No, because I would have ski-balled.
I don't know. I think those are all skiing. You need to be more specific.
As I have not skied in so long, the other Scott, when I said, I'm leery of suddenly going skiing again because I haven't skied in over a decade. And he says, skiing's like riding a bike. You'll be fine. And I said, you know what? You're right. And then I went and bought the stuff I needed to go skiing. And then the funny thing is, I went to buy the ski jacket, and the guy's like, yeah, there's going to be no snow in Pennsylvania. What are you thinking? So I'm assured wherever we're going, there's snow. And we're going to go skiing. And if I don't come back on Monday, you can assume that I'm in the hospital.
Well, even if you haven't gone skiing in a long time, if there's going to be just like shitty crap snow, right? And you go to some crap ass ski places, that's not so bad because it'll be cheaper. It'll be less crowded and you can get back into skiing and then save your money and your precious weekends for a high quality ski.
Well,
sometime later after your skills have improved.
Well, we had an alternate plan. If the skiing sucks, we can just sit in the lounge and drink all day.
That's you can do that too.
Yeah. But I think the one thing that might help me out is that I lived in Michigan. I skied. Almost all the skiing I ever did was in Michigan. And we don't get powder so much in Michigan. Not that the stuff you want to ski on. We basically get ice. So hopefully the fact that I've skied on nothing but the shittiest of snow my entire life, my entire skiing life, will allow me to not die this weekend when I am skiing on ice.
See, my
in
plan,
60-degree weather.
See, I have the guaranteed not die plan.
Oh, yeah, it's called Scott's patented I'm a wuss.
It's still called don't go skiing and instead do something else.
Like what? Skiing is...
Sit in front of the computer.
Skiing...
nice and safe. Comfortable
When
chair.
I was a kid...
Nice and warm, too.
And I skied on a semi-regular basis. It was pretty much the best thing in the world. Skiing is a fantastic sport.
It's an okay sport.
Downhill skiing. Cross-country skiing is not as fun.
It's not a bad sport, but at the same time, it is far too dangerous for my taste.
It's not dangerous unless you suck or don't learn how to do it right or are really weak. If you're really weak, it's dangerous.
More people have gotten hurt or killed skiing than race car driving, so...
Yeah, but you got to look at the demographics. More people get hurt on the Black Diamond who probably shouldn't be on the Black Diamond or falling off the ski lift because they don't know how to ride it.
I don't have evidence of this, but I'm pretty sure, I've seen more... professional skiing people, I don't know, I guess maybe it's kind of close. Have more professional skiing people gotten hurt or professional race car driving people gotten hurt?
It's hard to say, but I can say definitely that people who ski recreationally get hurt a lot. Partly because a lot of them are really, really stupid. God.
All right.
Anyway, it's anime day, and this news kind of came out of nowhere.
We're not talking about any anime today.
We're going to talk about anime.
All right.
So, Newtype USA is a fairly venerable publication in the U.S. It began, when we went to Otakon the first or second time?
I think it was 2002, I think? Late February? I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, it's actually a relatively new anime publication. The thing is, it is...
Well, I don't know, maybe 5 years, something
That's
like
not that long.
Yeah.
It's no proto-culture. But it was based on Newtype in Japan. And I remember before Newtype USA was released in the US in English, I was fascinated by Newtype.
And because I didn't even, The idea that there'd be actually a magazine just about anime, something so obscure, was insane. You know,
Well,
so
no, there were other magazines. I was talking about more the point that if you don't understand Japanese and you open a Newtype,
I was gonna talk about that too. So
it looks like it's the most fantastic thing ever. It's beautiful, just pictures and beautiful shots of every show.
I went to Anime Club and they had Newtype magazines there. I was like, what the hell is this? And it's this huge magazine. Every page is printed with amazing quality, with these amazing images of all these anime I've never seen or heard of, and all this information about anime that I can't read, but I imagined that if I could read it, it was giving me all this information I couldn't get anywhere else, and it was amazing, and I wanted to know.
So Newtype was released in America in English as Newtype USA, and
it had some it had some articles by U.S. people, some articles that we just translated from the Japanese Newtype.
Well, the thing is, I subscribed to it right away, and I got the first one, and it was great. And then I thought it was great, and then right before I got my first mailed one in the mail, I was reading it again, and I realized that I hadn't actually read any words. I just flipped through it the same way I flipped through the Japanese ones. Yeah. And I had this revelation of, wait a minute, I can read all those words. Oh, man. And I proceeded to discover that there was not a single word worth reading in Newtype USA.
I don't think... Well, the issues that I read, which were like a handful of the earlier issues of Newtype USA... Some of the little tiny blurb kind of things in the back contain somewhat obscure kinds of information and articles that you really wouldn't find anywhere else. And that was somewhat interesting.
But like those big shots of like a page with all the characters from an anime and then and 4 pages about this anime that's coming out. That text wasn't saying anything interesting.
The vast majority of it was completely useless. And as soon as I, thanks to things like Anime News Network, where I can find out about all the upcoming shows, Newtype USA really didn't have much of a use because I already knew most of the stuff that it was telling me.
I unsubscribed before the first issue came.
You didn't unsubscribe. Well, no, I was gonna. You just didn't pay for it.
I was gonna tell that story. I unsubscribed before the first one came because before the first one came, the bill came. Since being a college student, I had checked Bill Me Later, and I decided, well, I'm just not paying for Newtype. That's the end of this, and I stopped getting Newtype. And there have been fewer more worthless publications than Newtype USA.
No, as bad as Newtype USA was, as somewhat useless as it is far from being the most useless magazine ever.
I don't know. Soldier of Fortune is wonderful. I mean, how else would I know how I can be a badass in like Zimbabwe?
It's an okay magazine, but there are many worse magazines. Trust me.
And don't forget Car and Driver or our Golf Digest.
There are plenty of worse.
Let me put it this way: Newtype USA was like the biggest for me scam ever because it looked so great and then it turns out that those words didn't say anything.
Anyway, you going to tell the news about Newtype USA?
Well, Newtype USA is fucking done. That's what the news is.
It's done.
As of February, now according to Anime News Network, they're not sure if it's February or March because the details are scant.
Well, because what happens is every magazine in the United States is stupid, and they ship like the March issue in February, and it's like I never understood why the fuck they do that. It's
printing, the lead time for printing, the lead time for distribution.
Yes, but just change the month that's written on it. It's not hard. If you know it's gonna ship in March, write March on it. You know which one is shipping in which month.
Because the news in it is all from the previous month. That's how publications work.
So so instead of, pretending to act like you're actually providing something useful and up to date, you're just completely saying, fuck it, we know we're shit. We're super delayed news that's a month late and completely useless. Let's just write the old month on there.
I don't think that's a legitimate criticism. I think you're just a cranky weirdo who's obsessed with RSS feeds. You should write the month on the magazine that the magazine comes up to newsstands.
As opposed to when the stuff in the magazine is from? Actually, I think what most magazines write like the month after. Like I think the March ships in February. I don't know. It's stupid. It's stupid.
I don't think it's stupid at all.
I think it's stupid. So in February, you want the March magazine to show up.
I don't care. I don't care what month it says. I read the magazine.
I don't read any magazines because they're stupid. But
I don't care. You hate everything. So, but Newtype USA was worth hating, and now it's gone. And theoretically, they're planning to replace it with something, but they didn't say what.
See, that's very telling. If ADV is getting rid of Newtype USA, right? But they plan on coming out with another magazine, right? That tells me that they actually figured, their calculation is that they were making money off of it, or they would make money off of it, but they were probably paying some license fee, for the Newtype name, and they were probably paying to get like a lot of Newtype content and images and stuff. And I think they're probably bargaining that if they get the same number of subscribers to their new magazine and they don't have to pay all those fees for the content and the licensing from Newtype Japan or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they
money.
were getting any content from there anyway.
They were. They
not content. They were getting pictures.
They were getting content.
Now, I would barely classify anything in Newtype as content.
Well, that's the question, is that there was a lot of things in Newtype USA that were translated articles from Newtype Japan. The
What I
thing
don't
is,
get is why
they
does
weren't
anyone
good articles in Japan either.
What I don't get is why would anyone in Japan read Newtype?
I don't know. They're otaku. What do you want?
But the really interesting thing, and this is pointed out here on Anime News Network, but no one knows what Newtype circulation was, because like every stupid industry thing in all of anime in the US, no one publishes any information. They keep everything secret. So people guess that Newtype had between 50,000 and 75,000 subscribers. But no one knows, and no anime magazine publishes jack, so we can't really say anything beyond that.
Yeah, I really just don't understand these people keeping it a secret. Like, oh, people will know we're doing shittily, or they'll know we're doing well. And it's like, what do you care? That if you're doing shittily, people knowing you're doing shittily isn't gonna hurt you. You're gonna do shittily no matter what. And if you're doing well, you should brag about how well you're doing, so that you might do better. I don't know.
Newtype.
Yeah.
There's a picture of me in you, and that's about all I can say about you.
Yeah. All right. So I probably had a good news, but I didn't want to look for it. So I'm going to do a geek back. I've decided now.
Geek bite?
Geek bite.
Why do you keep saying geek back?
I don't know. It's a better word.
Nah.
Anyway.
I think you came up with geek bite.
I came up with both of them.
Well, you should have chosen better.
Yes. Anyway. I've decided that there usually aren't a lot of good newses on Wednesday, and we usually just read Anime News Network because it's the only website with anime news. And
hey, Newtype USA is going away.
Yeah, that's a good news, but there's only one. And occasionally there's an underwear pervert news from like Newsarama, but that's it. So I'm doing more Geek Bites on Wednesdays because I read a lot of comics and things that Rim doesn't read. So I gotta get them out to you, right? So in my box of comics this month came this comic called Wonton Soup. You like wonton soup?
I do.
All right. By James Stokoe. I probably said his name wrong. Stokoe. It's an Oni press, which is the same people who published Scott Pilgrim, and the same format as Scott Pilgrim. It's a little manga-sized digest deal, but it's printed left to right because it's American. It's not a manga. It's just a comic book like Scott Pilgrim. The artistic style, it's pretty good art. There's some, it's got manga style paneling and such, but the art style is sort of Gorillaz-ish and like punk kid styling. And it's not the greatest comic in the world. I'm not gonna lie, but it's just sort of fun and sort of happy. Basically, the story is this guy named Johnny Boyo. Yeah, great name. And he's got a friend, Deacon Vans, and Deacon Vans loves the ladies, and Johnny Boyo loves cooking, and they're truckers in space.
Uh-huh.
And basically, it turns into Johnny Boyo goes back to his cooking school that he dropped out of to become a space trucker, and it's all sort of like Initial D, but with cooking. But it's not, that and alone. I mean, that's been done before. There's plenty of cooking animes and things, Iron Walk, whatever, and such like that, right? But because this is in space, all of the things they cook are like completely made up alien dishes, and people are using like alien. He like has to cook against aliens who have like, two bodies and extra arms and legs, and the tasting judge is a giant tongue, and it's not really, amazing or anything, but it's just fun, and I enjoyed it. So if you think you'd like that, this is cheap. It's $12 from Oni Press. It's probably in stores near you. Wonton soup.
Anyway, things of the day. Now, this was announced at CES, and normally I'd talk about this on a Monday, but I have to talk about this on a Wednesday because it does not bode well for people who do not want to see certain things at anime conventions. You see, there has always been kind of one of the holy grails of cell phones for people who are nuts about cell phones is, what if my cell phone were also a projector, and
Well,
I could just project video onto a surface.
It's not something that's always been a holy grail, but there have been many companies developing such technology and demonstrating it. Sort of like people have been making and demonstrating, flexible papers and things like that, And it's one of those technologies that people are always showing off at trade shows and, showing development versions of it and stuff like that, but no one ever actually makes it happen for real on real consumer products. It's just something always you see on Engadget, you see pictures on the internet, but it never comes to life.
Now, the situation here is that it exists and it pretty much works, and very rich people and people who really, really care are going to start having these things in the relatively near future. Now, what is going to happen, I'm going to give you a little look into the future, is going to be the same thing that happened when laser pens came into existence.
Yeah, we're talking like 2-3 years from now.
I mean, basically, laser pens existed, but they were really, really expensive, and they were kind of useless. So fancy pants professors and people who had way too much money and way too little sense owned laser pens. And they used them to impress people when they gave, presentations.
Or they used them for science experiments.
Very few people, because if you were doing a science experiment, you probably just had a laser.
We used them in middle school to do tests of refraction and stuff like that.
Wow, in middle school, we just had argon lasers.
We had laser pens.
But anyway, laser pens eventually got under $100. And once they were less than $100 and you could buy them at Radio Shack for like $70-$80, every kid in the goddamn world had a laser pen. You would walk down the street and there'd be red dots everywhere. There'd be red dots in people's living rooms because the kid across the street is shooting it from the roof. Go to a movie theater, there'd be 50 red dots on the face. It went nuts. And eventually,
for about a month or two.
Eventually it died down. The novelty ended, but
also the police threats sort of made it die down also.
I think the only reason it really ended was that people explored all of the things you could do with a laser pen.
Not much.
And that was the end of it. Now, imagine if instead of projecting a little red dot, you could project full motion, 24 frame per second yaoi.
Great. Of course, if the lights are bright, it's probably not going to be too visible.
Oh no, but you're going to be in a showing room and you're going to be trying to watch your Kujibike unbalanced, and then suddenly there's going to be penises all over all the walls. Not to mention,
hopefully it won't work from too far away from the wall, so someone will have to be sitting right near the wall to make it work and to make it,
The thing is, I'm interested to see exactly what happens with all this, because, there's always that guy or that girl at the anime con who's sitting there in the hallway, and a lot of times you'll see them multiple days in the same spot, and they'll have, their laptop, and on their laptop, they've got all the anime music videos they downloaded from somewhere, or they've got, DDR, and they just sit there playing DDR with their fingers, not even on a pad, or watching these music videos, or watching these fan subs, attempting to gather crowds, and eventually they will. And there's these little pockets of people kind of surrounding these attention whores,
There's that one guy who does it, I think, at Katsucon and at Kineticon. He just sets up his little computer, and he plays stuff, and people sit around watching it, and he's gets all into it. He's a very strange man.
There's going to be
a
lot more of that once these things start getting more commonplace. So be warned.
Yeah, in 2 or 3 years, anime convention's going to get scary. You know that it's going to be real scary when, the iPhone has a projector in it. You can just aim the iPhone at the wall, and then the video you bought on iTunes shows up.
I mean, at least luckily for now, we're not going to have to worry too much, because the people who buy these are going to be, attention, oh my God, check out my thing.
The same people have iPhones now.
But at the same time, they'll be relatively rare. And I'm not too worried, but give it a couple years and
this year you will see at least one phone become available somewhere in the world that has a projector in it to consumers. Scary. All right, that was your thing of the day, not a news?
Yeah.
Okay. So check this out. Apparently, this is as reported by Kotaku, so whatever. But they got it from a Japanese site, which is linked here.
Oh, so some guy on the internet in Japan.
There's pictures. Basically, they have word that criminals are hunting Japanese otaku, right? Because there have been cases in Japan of otaku getting stabbed and otaku getting mugged, and otaku are being targeted by criminals, right? Apparently, police in Shinjuku have been stopping people who look like otaku and subjecting them to spot checks. So they'll be anyone who looks like an otaku, the police see them, they stop them, and then they search them for illegal stuffs. right? I guess you can do that in Japan. That wouldn't fly in the U.S., but
Wait a minute, but I thought the otaku were the victims. So
I don't
why are
know.
they-
That's why it makes no sense. But apparently, a supposed police list describes what types of individuals cops should check, right? So here's the list of criteria the police in Japan are looking for to see who they should check. You ready?
Aside from the fact that this is creepy police state action, this
Right.
ought to be hilarious.
People wearing camouflage trousers or jackets.
Yep.
People with chains or keys hanging off their trousers.
Yep.
People who look weak.
Yep.
People wearing a bandana. And people
Maybe.
wearing leather.
leather.
So basically, that's like, apparently, that's a lot of otaku in Japan apparently meet those descriptions.
Wow. Should we give the list of what an American otaku is?
Yeah.
I don't know, kind of chubby, kind of flabby, kind of pale,
Yeah.
with
Anyway.
a million tchotchkes hanging from their keychain
Yeah.
and a bus pass.
So to see if those rumors, right, were true, right? This guy went to Shinjuku and he followed all of those rules. He wore camouflage pants and had chains with keys, and he had a bandana and like a leather jacket. Well, yeah, the whole thing, right? To see if he got stopped. And he did get stopped, right? But he put a note in his back. He was wearing a backpack too that the police would obviously want to search, right? And in that backpack, it was only one thing. It was a note that said, "Bummer, failure." So yeah, check this out. There's a picture of him holding up the note, and there's a picture of him with the police on the note, and it's pretty funny.
So if this is legitimate, then the Japan minus, because that's not cool.
Yeah,
And I still don't, it makes no sense that if otaku are being targets of crime, why would they target otaku?
yeah, I don't know. It could be something that's lost in translation.
Maybe
like-
they think that otaku are, I don't know, doing bad things, and then the criminal elements are targeting them because of that. Maybe they think people are dressing up like otaku to do these things.
I have no idea, but that's what it says here, and I can't read the Japanese site. Someone else can try to read it, see what it really says. But yeah,
Great. So anyway, tonight we're going to talk about, yet again, a comic book.
holy shit,
Oh, snap.
Rim's reading the comics.
We'll see how long this lasts.
Yeah. So what comic are we going to talk about?
Oh, you want me to introduce it?
We could introduce it.
Well, this thing, it's something that I think most people are aware exists. I mean, even when I was a kid, I remember seeing this. You're like, oh, it's that thing. I know about that
When you were a
thing.
kid.
Well, when I was a kid, I mean before college.
Uh-huh.
And I'd think, oh, it's that thing. Everyone, like, you'd see it in places and you'd hear about it. And a lot of people who were into comics talked about it. But never read it. And I didn't know a lot of people who had read it. So I didn't really know much about it.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw this around, like, basically I saw images of it and I could recognize it, and I didn't know what it was called, and later I did know what it was called, but I sort of like associated it with, like, Johnny the Homicidal Maniac and all those sort. I thought it was one of those kind of comics, for like, the punk goth kids. I thought it was one of their kind of things, and I didn't really know about it. And I think a lot of people in general recognize, if they see it, they recognize it. They go, I've seen that somewhere. But you don't really know what it is, or maybe you know what it's called, except for people who've read it. And
See, I don't know. Mine was different in that, I'd always go to comic shops because I kind of wanted to get into comic books, and I'd always see it there. And I read, I think, like one of the issues. I didn't know it was this giant continuous story, and I just didn't. I don't know.
Yep. So what we're talking about today is Bone by Jeff Smith, and only Jeff Smith, and no one else.
Bone is the story of three bones from Boneville who leave Boneville and go on an epic journey and eventually return to Boneville.
Yeah, you should go and search on the internet, and you'll see what these Bone characters look like, and you'll go, oh, that's what you guys are talking about, in case you don't know already. Because I'm sure if you're a geek, you've seen this before somewhere. And if you haven't realized this, they're called Bones because, well, they look like bones.
And they're from Boneville, and their names are Smiley Bone, Phony Bone, and Phone Bone.
Yep.
Now, I finally read it, and Bone is really this kind of... It's not what I expected based on even what I'd read before and just on, what you expect from those kind of characters.
Yeah, you look at the cover of this comic and... Or any, you cannot guess even what genre this thing is. But when you actually read it, you go, oh, and it's not like a surprise or anything. It's not like something new and original. It's a type of story that has been told before. It's just not what you would expect from looking at it.
To sum it up, Bone is basically just a straight up fantasy.
It's an all ages, epic adventure fantasy story. That's what it is.
It just so happens that the three main characters are extremely stylized and really don't fit in with the entire rest of the comic at all.
Yep.
But other than that, it's just a straight up fantasy comic, and that's the end of it.
Well, it's a very long, straight up fantasy
It is very
comic.
long. It was over 50 issues.
Yeah, this thing, it was a lot. It was basically, this came out a lot of issues, like 50 something issues, and it came out over the course of a long number of years, and there was no regular schedule. It wasn't like monthly. It was an issue came out, they waited a bunch, another issue came out. Can you imagine if trying to read this when it was coming out in issues? It would have been so painful. You know, you would have been over 10 years, you'd be getting an issue and having no clue when the next issue was coming, right? But now you can get all of Bone in one volume, one tremendous volume, which is what I have, which is what we read, which is the Bone one volume edition. And it's this gigantic fat paperback book. It's actually relatively cheap for what you get. It's black and white, and it's every issue.
I'd highly recommend if you want to read Bone, and you'll probably want to read Bone because it's pretty enjoyable, that you get that.
Yeah.
Because you don't want 50 or so little issues.
That are going to be hard to get. Now, if you are wealthy, you can get each individual chapter of Bone, right? And these are separate volumes. I don't think all the volumes are out yet. You can get it in color because they're releasing these color volumes chapter by chapter. And they haven't done all the chapters. Maybe they have. But you can buy color chapters instead of the one big black and white volume. If you really want color and you're willing to pay for it, they have it. So, what else are we going to say about Bone?
Well, the story is actually... There's a lot of interesting, I guess, things to talk about related to Bone. I kind of want to avoid talking about the plot in any great depth because it goes so far from where it begins.
Well, we could talk about the beginning of the plot, though. The premise is you have this place called Boneville, and there's these bones living there, right?
Well,
but
you don't even start with that. You start with three bones who have been run out of Boneville.
Yeah.
Because one of them epically failed to run for mayor.
I was about to say that they were run out of Boneville. So these three bones got run out of town, so they're basically exiled, and they're in this middle of nowhere. And eventually, they end up somewhere else, where the story takes place.
Yeah, it's kind of like they get lost, and they wander around, and they end up in this kind of normal fantasy world where everyone looks like a normal fantasy character.
Yeah,
and the three of them look like comic book characters.
It's almost like an Escaflowne kind of transported to a fantasy world story, except they're not transported, they just walk to one that they didn't know was there.
And then the snows fall and they can't get back, and then they get separated and caught up in this kind of crazy escalating story that it gets very epic toward the end.
I think the two things I like most about Bone, right? Well, first of all, the art is it's like I can't really imagine art that takes fantasy but also like cartoonish art and combines it in such a way in which they can, you know, at times the art will be like whoa, and at other times it can be funny, and it totally works. I don't know. It's Jeff Smith.
I think that my favorite thing is that the bone, like, you'll get really into it. And then whenever something like one of the bones gets punched or something something frightening or horrible happens, they'll often make this face where their eyes go buggy with a dot in the middle and their mouth kind of goes open. And it's such a cartoony thing, but I cracked up out loud every time I saw it. It just fits so well.
Also, one thing I like is that there are dragons in this story, right?
Oh,
awesome dragons.
I think I have to point out that the way dragons are portrayed in Bone is exactly how I like dragons to be portrayed.
I think that's everyone says that is pretty much that it's a fantasy story. There's dragons, there's magic, there's wizards and warlocks and whatnot, right?
But the one dragon that you see, the dragon that is involved in the story,
the most of all the other dragons,
is the most even-keeled thing you will ever see in any work.
He's the best character.
Oh god.
Of course, that's you know, saying he's the best character is that's like say, man, you know, you watch something like Full Metal Alchemist or something. There's a bunch of characters, and some you like a lot, and some not so much. In Bone, every character is super awesome, just some slightly more awesome than others. And I think that's the biggest strength of Bone, is that every character is like your favorite. You can't, except for the dragon, who's the most favorite.
Yeah, the dragon pretty much wins out. The look on his face, and that look pretty much never, like, it changes so
And also the
subtly.
witty things he says.
I
But even the bad guys are awesome in this thing.
I think my favorite bad guys, however, are the stupid fat rat creatures.
Yeah, those are right up there. But Rokja,
Rokja
is also an amazing character. Yeah.
And part of it's just the way they're drawn. I mean, Rockjaw in particular, he's a cat, right? He's this giant mountain cat, and he's drawn and portrayed so, I guess, as accurately cat-like as a being like that would be if it existed in the real world, just in terms of his facial expressions and the way he reacts to things is just beautiful.
Yeah, no wonder it took this guy so long to make this thing. You know, if it took him that long, at least he did a good job on it.
Yeah, talk about characters staying on model. Good God.
Yeah, I mean, it's one dude making this whole thing, and that's not common in, U.S. comics or anything like that. That's, in manga, that's more common, but they have assistants. This guy did the whole thing on his own, Tezuka styling.
Now, the main characters are Phone Bone and Phonesible P Bone, a.k.a. Phony Bone, and they look the same, except that Phony Bone wears a shirt with a star on it, and Phone Bone's pretty much naked.
Yep.
And Phone Bone's a pretty nice guy, and Phonesible is a complete jackass.
And Smiley Bone is sort of like the...
Smiley Bone's an idiot savant.
Yeah, he's like the comic relief, tall, kind of, funny guy who's like on this... That's sort of like a Marx Brothers setup in a way. And Smiley Bone's sort of like, he hangs with, Phony Bone, and sort of does the bad stuff with him. And,
but he's totally amoral.
Out.
He doesn't care at all. He does a bad thing, good thing, whatever. He just does things.
Yep, he just does, he's just chilling, hanging out, doing what people want, going along with the show, seeing what happens.
Now, of course, I can't forget, because I love his name, and I love every time I see him, King Doc.
King Doc.
King Doc is the smiliest dude, but it's not a good kind of smiley.
It's so great how the way they draw the smiles on King Doc and his henchmen. It's like a big toothy smile that is simultaneously like happy, evil, hungry, and scary and dangerous, and all at the same time. It's pretty terrific.
Now, the only criticism I have about Bone, and I guess I can get this out right away, is that I read the whole thing in one effective go over the course of about a week.
I read it in a go in like a couple days.
Well, I only read it on the train, and I usually sleep in the morning, so I only read it on the way home. But the only thing I can say bad about Bones, that reading it in one go, or one go-ish, at about the 2/3 point, it starts to get a little bit cliche, and you start to lose the drive.
Yeah, I definitely, it is all terrific, but it definitely feels to me, right, that when I read it, there's a point at which, like, the first part of the plot is, like, coming to a head, like the first climax in the story, like, big climax, right? And then there's a huge reveal. And I really felt that, I don't know, I'd have to ask Jeff Smith to see if this is true, but the impression I get, I don't know how many times I'm going to say that, is that first reveal was, like, planned from the beginning, right? And that was the plan. And then after that, he sort of didn't have that planned out as well as he had points up. So it's like part A had a super plan written for it, and it's executed beautifully. And after that, the plan is not so perfect.
Well, I know there was at least a secondary plan. I've read in multiple places that he drew the last page of Bone very early on.
Uh-huh.
However, the last page is kind of predictable, even from the beginning, and it's kind of a standard ending that, oh, okay, that's what happens.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a story for everybody. It's all ages, so you can't expect like some horrible, terrible ending or anything like that.
However, the big reveal Scott is talking about, I mean, pretty much my favorite things in order are this reveal, the dragon, Rockjaw, and then pretty much everything else. But the big reveal, the epic moment, I mean, there's basically, you're kind of wondering where this is going, and there's a lot of mysteries as to why all these, the dragon and all these people care about these bones who had nothing to do with this world, and what's going on, and why does the hooded one await he who bears the star, and basically one thing leads to another, and there's that epic reveal happens where something comes over the horizon and something is revealed in epic glory. And I remember when I read that page, I flipped to that page and it blindsided me. And in retrospect, I could have seen it coming, but retrospect, no one sees this coming.
Right. I think that's the best thing plot-wise about Bone is how
That's the best thing in like any comic book ever.
he puts little bits into the story, right, that are sort of offhanded, or like he'll have like a chapter or a part of a chapter, right, like a multiple page sequence that's telling a joke because it's it's comedic early on. I think a lot of the best big adventure stories start out sort of comedic and happy to let you introduce you to the characters and grow to like them, while just planting a seed of the big plot, which is revealed later. And that Bone does that as well as anything has ever done it.
Yeah, it definitely ramps up the serious and ramps down the humor, but doesn't eliminate the humor.
No, it doesn't eliminate the humor at all. There are many other things that do that, though.
But this reveal, when I saw it, I stared at it for about a second and I dropped the stupid book. I was laughing out loud so hard. That alone makes Bone worth reading.
Yeah.
Oh my, even if you don't like Bone, get to that point. You'll know it when it happens.
That is the biggest reveal, but there are many other things in the book where they drop a small hint in like a joke, or they bring something up like in like a page or a panel. But they make you notice it. You won't forget it. Well, you'll forget it, but when they remind you of it 10 chapters later, you'll remember that you saw it. And I love it when that happens. When they give you something, you put it in the trunk, right? I mean, normally you get the sort of Scooby-Doo effect. The, what's his name?
Chekhov's gun.
Chekhov's gun, right? It's someone is trying to foreshadow something. It stands out like a sore thumb. You know it means something later. You've got your eye on it. And then eventually when it reappears, like it's going to, you say, I saw that coming a mile away. It was Chekhov's gun. It was Scooby-Doo. That door in the background, was obviously drawn on the cell and on the background. So I knew it was going to be animated. So I knew a zombie was going to come out of it. You're not fooling anybody, right? But he basically does Chekhov's gun, and you forget about the gun, which is so hard to do from a writing and art perspective, and he pulls it off multiple times. Doesn't do it 100% of the time. There were eventually, and I think that's part of why the sort of towards the end, it gets a little bit cliche, because the Chekhov's gunning is not so accurate.
Yeah, pretty much a lot of the events that take place at the end kind of come out of nowhere. And actually, later on in the story, it seems like there's, like when an issue ends and the next one begins, or a volume ends and the next one begins in the book, there's often a bit of a disconnect, or the action really gets interrupted and things kind of don't always line up 100% right around the transitions.
Yep.
But seriously, that reveal, I cannot express to you. People were looking at me at the train because I dropped the book was on the ground.
And it's a
at
gigantic book.
And I'm just laughing uncontrollably. It was epic. And then
the whole thing is epic. I mean, it's, there aren't too many epic adventure fantasy stories out there. This is one of the best ones, top 10 probably.
It's also, the end is kind of melancholy, as I guess all epic things tend to be. I mean, look at the end of Lord of the Rings, how absolutely melancholy, to use the word again, it is. I mean, it's over and everyone's can't quite deal with what's happened to them. And
we went on a big adventure, and everything happened that you thought was going to happen.
And now it's over. And a lot of movies
boring life
and a lot of stories end at like the climax happens, and then all right, happily ever after. And Bone does the thing that I love so much. Escaflowne did this. The Lord of the Rings did this, where you did it. It's over. And then you get what comes after. And what comes after is always very interesting and often kind of sad and kind of not necessarily anticlimactic, but like the feeling you have when a journey's over and you have to continue living your life. You no longer have this goal in front of you this goal has been everything you've cared about. It's, Frodo's got the ring, and the ring is all that matters in the world. And now he's done it. The ring's gone. Now what?
Go to the Grey Havens and chill.
Well, that's one answer. Samwise was cool. He's like, all right, I'm going to go back to Hobbiton and be a hobbit.
Yeah, but even then, it was kind of like sitting around, more an old Hobbiton. Yep.
There's another interesting
It's sort of
thing.
like riding the big roller coaster and riding a little roller coaster. I mean, having a family like you did in Hobbiton is a little roller coaster, but you go to Mordor and then you go back and you have to deal with
Mordor.
You have to deal with your punk kids. You're like,
Rockjaw.
whatever, my kids, I can keep them in line. It's not
Though
it's like doing cocaine and then doing less cocaine. Not that I would know what that was like.
One thing, one thing that I found really interesting, and I don't really want to. I guess it's not much of a spoiler in saying that this does not terribly come up, but I was kind of surprised it didn't. But all throughout the first half of Bone, and even all the way through the end, and this Chekhov's gun keeps being shown to you. They keep showing you this gun. And even after some things happen, they still show you the gun. It's like, well, the gun's already been fired, and I don't think there's any more bullets in it. Why do they keep showing it to me? But it is obvious that Boneville is basically the modern world. Boneville, they keep referencing things in Boneville offhandedly, and it's obvious that Boneville is a progressive, modern, democratic society that has probably electricity and nuclear power plants and just a normal, civilized world. And they put this fact in your face all the time with little asides, even near the end where this one, like in the very end, like when these climaxes are happening and something comes up with food and this mystic suggests to Smiley Bone that he try this stinky cheese, and Phonesible makes a remark to the effect of, you people with your like unprocessed food, what are you trying to kill us? Don't people know how to cook around here? And all these references, and that fucking doesn't really come up at all in all of Bone.
No, not really.
Except in one time it comes up. Barely.
Yeah, I guess.
Granted, that one time.
All right. Is there anything else we got to say?
I don't know. There's a lot of the things I could say would kind of ruin Bone.
I know I don't want to ruin, because there's not a lot of. I mean, there's some messages in Bone and some themes and whatnot, but for the most part, it's a straight up, in your face, open book adventure tale. So anything you can say about it other than why it's good or that you should read it or, what about it is what we like, would just be giving away the plot, which is all that is there. Even though the plot is an amazing plot that's epic, you can't really say anything about it without spoiling it.
Oh my God. All right, this is Wikipedia, so all grains of salt in place. According to Wikipedia, I'm just going to read here. In the 1990s, an attempt to produce a film of Bone through Nickelodeon Films was unsuccessful. According to Smith, Nickelodeon saw the story strictly as children's entertainment and insisted that Bone characters be voiced by child actors and that the film had to include pop songs by Britney Spears and NSYNC. Smith's argument was that no one would even briefly consider putting pop songs in film adaptations of The Lord of the Rings, and therefore they will not be placed in Bone either.
And so it was.
I can say one thing, though. I think Bone would translate brilliantly to a film or a series of films.
It would have to be something long.
Or you could do it Lord of the Rings style, or you could do it, maybe in Japan where they just animate a show for 13 or 26 episodes. It worked great in that context.
Oh, it would work terrifically. There's also, I think there's some adventure games of Bone. And I got to say, if you like the kind of stories you get from LucasArts adventure games, Bone is the same kind of story as that.
Yep.
You will like that action. There's also a Bone adventure game made by someone that you might be able to get. It's, I don't know. Oh, last year, there was a Mac version of it came out.
Oh, great.
So, yeah, you might be able to get the adventure game if you search around the net. And see what else have we got.
But seriously, I think Bone would be great as a film, partly because there's no sort of inner monologue. It's done very cinematically, and everything it's because characters say it or you see it.
Yep.
And you could basically take the comic book and use that to do the storyboards and then just make Bone.
Yep.
It kind of bothers me that no one's done something like this, because I think it would go over
they
really
tried.
well. Well, yes, they tried in the 1990s, and it was Nickelodeon.
Yeah. The only other thing I had to say about Jeff Smith, the guy who made it, he went to work on Shazam and the Monster Society of Shazam and the Monster Society of Evil. So I'm waiting for that to be in a trade paperback, and then I'll buy it. He's starting a new thing, right, called Razzle, RASL, and I think the first issue comes out in a month or two. I pre-ordered it, obviously, but I'll probably wait a few years for there to be one giant book of the whole thing before I actually, buy it. But yeah, he's starting a new comic. So if you like Bone, you should buy Jeff Smith's new comic and the other comics he's made, because he really hasn't made too many comics. I mean, he worked on Bone for how many years? And he didn't work on much else. I mean, maybe he did some covers and, things like that, but,
All right, I think we'll leave it at that, because seriously, Bone is 100% worth reading. I can't think of anyone who wouldn't enjoy Bone.
Someone who's not a human.
If you don't like reading, then you probably won't like Bone. That's about all I can say. This has been Geek Nights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geek Nights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Odeo. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.